All right. Well, hello, everybody. I've got 1201 here in Boston. Thank you for joining us for today's BU Professional Development webinar, You're Not Alone, Surviving a Toxic Work Environment. My name is Jeff Murphy. I work on the Career Programs team here at BU in the Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is sponsored by BU Alumni Relations and is offered to our 335,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. And we aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know we have some alumni joining us today, some from very far away places like Perth, Australia, Vienna, Austria, China, Dublin, Rome, the Netherlands, Peru, Taiwan, Phoenix, Arizona, Encinitas, California, Aurora, Colorado, St. Paul, Minnesota, Bedford, Texas, Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Acton, Allston, Arlington, Bellingham, Belmont, Bridgewater, and more. For each and every one of you out there, thanks for tuning in. Before I introduce today's speaker for today's webinar, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on our Zoom online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Zoom support. And you can call them if you want to jot down the number. It's 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you may have. I expect we're going to have some great scenario questions from the audience about this topic. You're welcome to submit those throughout the presentation using the Q&A function in Zoom. If you hover over your screen with your mouse or with your cursor, a menu should pop up and you'll see a little square box with a Q on it for Q&A. Just click on that. It'll allow you to type in your question. Again, do that anytime during the presentation. We're going to save those for the end and make sure we get to as many as we can. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, BU College of Arts and Sciences alumnus Jesse B. Rauch. Rauch? Rauch.
Rauch rhymes with couch,
Rauch.
but with an R.
Rhymes with couch. Sorry about that, Jesse. It's been a long time. Jesse has over 15 years of teaching, training, facilitating, and management experience. He's the founder of Reply All Consulting, a company offering custom-made, evidence-based workshops and training sessions designed for employees and managers aiming to create positive work environments. He's completed both a Master of Arts in Teaching and a Master of Public Policy from American University, but still cherishes and values his BU education above all else. Jesse is a resident of the District of Columbia and is also the founder and commissioner of District Karaoke, which is Washington, D.C.'s first and only social team-based karaoke league. Jesse, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'll get my slide deck up and running, or I'll close my slide deck here while we get yours up and running. But while we're doing that, Social Karaoke League, what's your own personal go-to karaoke jam?
Oh, I would say I really like singing Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid.
The Little Mermaid, okay.
That is one of my favorites.
It's one of those ones that really gets the crowd riled up.
Yeah, lets people know that they can sing anything they want.
Well, we could talk more about karaoke at the end, but we're here to talk about a really important topic. So thank you for doing this and take it away.
Great. Jeff, well, before I do that, I don't have the full chat. I only see the chat with you. Is there something I'm supposed to do?
No, that's for sending a message. I think if people end up using the chat, you should see, if they select to send it to all panelists and attendees, you should see it come through. If you wanted to use the chat at any point and still can't see it, Jesse, just let me know and I can read back answers to you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, hello, everyone. As Jeff said, my name is Jesse Rauch, and I am the founder of Reply All Consulting. And I am so happy to be here today. This workshop comes out of my experience, and I'm honored to share it with y'all and from the BU community. First, about me, I graduated CAS 2004. I studied psychology and political science, double major. I lived in Warren Towers for 2 years, and then another 2 years on Beacon Street, right near PJ Kilroy's, if you remember that. In fact, the transparent image in the back of this slide is actually my front stoop at 830 Beacon Street. I miss good stoop sitting. We just don't do that as much in DC. A little bit more about my background. I did work 11 years in education, everything from teacher to working in public policy with our city council, our state office here in DC, and even with our state board of education. Indeed, I do run a competitive karaoke league that exists in DC, Baltimore, Chicago, and LA. I'm looking for some Boston spots, so if you're interested, you could email me about that as well. I've spent 4 years teaching salary negotiation workshops for a gender-based gender advocacy organization, helping women close the gender pay gap. But like you, I'm experienced in toxic workplaces. And I imagine that some of you are as well, and that's why you're here today. So let me go over what this workshop is going to be today. I'm sure none of you signed up for this workshop because you have a perfect, idyllic workplace environment or experience. It's more likely you have experienced something that's been awry, something that's slightly toxic. And if you haven't yet, congrats, but you probably will in the future. Today, we're going to go over some signs of toxic workplaces, but also what the powers that you have in order to improve them, even if you're not a manager. I left a toxic workplace this past January. It wasn't my first one, but what it did do was strengthen my resolve to help fix workplace issues, namely offering trainings and workshops to help people examine their own roles in both interrupting and perpetuating toxic workplaces. And hopefully this is the start of a movement so that we can always make work sustainable and engaging, and we can all thrive at work. So just some community agreements that I wanted to go over. For one, I'm going to invite you to take some polls and to send chats to me so that we can engage and kind of talk with each other. So not only actively participate, but if there is a public chat, which I'm not sure if we'll be able to see other people's options, also to listen to see what other people are responding. That's where learning is going to be happening as well. To be mindful of other people's experiences, different ways that you might think something should be handled may not be the way that others' experience might be, so just keep that in mind. I also want this to be a safe space. I want you to be able to share your stories, your experience is worthwhile, even whatever your background is. You know, it's important and it is your lived experience. So I want you to make sure that you feel that you can share that in this space. I facilitate a lot, and one of my favorite agreements is just for you to be you. If you get it, it's a joke about my alma mater, our alma mater. It's about being authentic. This is a space where I want you to, think about your experience again and remember how valuable it is. But ultimately, we're here to also respect confidentiality. I know DC is not a big town. We have people, you never know who's listening to you at the next table. So we also want to make sure that we respect confidentiality, particularly because these are workplace-related issues. And we want to make sure that we're treating each other with that level of respect. So I have some numbers for you, though, to get us started. According to Gallup, only 34% of employees are actively engaged at work. That means that they love what they're doing, they feel great about it, they feel that they have control of their environment. 13% are actively engaged, are actively disengaged. The other 53%, a majority of workers, are not engaged. That's showing up to work, doing the minimum required, and then they'll leave if they find something better. I don't know where you all fit, whether you think that you're actively engaged at work, that's great. If you feel really disengaged, or if you're somewhere in that middle ground, but I'm pretty sure we can all think about experiences where we felt that way. Can anyone guess what this number represents? Over 120,000? Give you a second to ponder that. See, it's the number of people that die from the effects of toxic and unhealthy workplaces every year. And this is a number that comes out of a Stanford professor, Jeffrey Pfeffer. He wrote a book called Dying for a Paycheck, where he found that American workplaces and management practices are just simply destroying individual and organizational health. And so this is a real problem. If ultimately you're not alone, if you have felt any time something toxic or unhealthy in your workplace, it literally is killing people. And my want today is to help you uh, address that. And Allison, you've just written a chat to us. Can you just specify which link you want? Otherwise, what I can do is I can make sure both get up there. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask a poll question. You ready, Jeff?
Yeah.
I want to know, how have you ever worked in a toxic workplace? And while you answer that poll question, I'm going to go right back to Allison. And you can all read this wonderful book that I read.
So Jesse, while you're working on that, I want to remind folks, we're going to use the chat function also on the webinar today. You'll just hover over your menu, look for chat. There's a chance that for some of you, the chat might actually be buried under a little selection that says more. But in the chat, you have the ability to decide if you send your response just to Jesse and I, or if you share it with the group. And that's where, when Jesse's talking about respecting confidentiality, we want people to share with the group. So also for some of you, I don't know if you're not seeing the actual poll thing that's up, but you're replying with your answer in the chat as opposed to on the poll. Zoom is pretty complex, but it works out really good ways. So I'm seeing Yvonne has said yes, Liz has said yes, Joyce has said yes. So yeah, some people are weighing in. Jesse, we've got a good percentage of the audience that has responded to the poll,
right.
and so I'm going to share.
Let's see what those results are.
So you can see them. No surprises here, right?
No surprises. 87% of you felt that you've been in a toxic work environment, and 7 of you, 13%, were not sure. In other words, this is your lived experience, right? We've all been in some sort of toxic work environment, toxic school environment, or otherwise. And this is why I want to share again. You're not alone. And hopefully, I did look at some of the years that you all graduated. Some of you may not know what movie this is. This is Mean Girls. So what are the signs of a toxic workplace? I want to hear from you again. In your experience, what have been things that have happened to you that made you feel that you were in an unhealthy space? Type your answers in the chat window. Make sure it goes to at least all panelists so that I can see those. Yes, bullying coming in. That's awful. A lack of respect, distrust, blocking from advancement, being belittled in meetings, disrespect, the gossip, being undermined, not feeling safe to present new ideas, criticism of family care needs. Oh, gosh, yes, gaslighting, bigotry, being overbearing or perhaps micromanaging, people not listening to feedback. Timon and Pumbaaing, when they present your ideas as theirs. I've not heard it called that before. Sexism, absentee managers, insecure CEOs, just trying to keep track of all these. Oh, there's so many things. Harassment, ageism, rumors again, racial issues. The idea that everything is urgent and must be done now. Ganging up on others, feeling ignored. Projects not being valued or used. You're just writing a report that just ends up on a shelf, micromanagement. Yes. These are so incredibly, these are real experiences. And I'm sure that I was just reading one thing from each of you, but you've all probably experienced more than one thing also. And funny thing is, almost everything that's on this slide here that are symptoms of toxic workplaces, you all just said and chatted about. This is how pervasive it is. It didn't take me much to put a slide together and to capture the same types of treatment that you're getting, from micromanagement and gaslighting to forms of discrimination, the way that, some symptoms you might find is that there's high turnover in places where there's pretty toxic workplace. And, that means that you might even be doing the work that someone else is supposed to be doing. So I've got the question of what is gaslighting. It's a really good question. So gaslighting is a term that's often used when you're kind of, I've actually never actually defined it for myself. So it's more like the idea when you're manipulating someone psychologically. Like it's kind of, if you say the sky is blue, but they say no, it's not, it's green, and they keep forcing that, and it makes you question your own reality on whether or not are you the one that's crazy. So that's what gaslighting is. So you've probably experienced it at some point. It's often done, men often do it to women. But good question, Joe. All right, so we just talked about what you've experienced, and we know that you're all fed up, and you're fed up with this. We know, if we look at Oscar here, he's experiencing all sorts of emotions right now here, and you are feeling those too. And thank you, Candace, for also giving a definition for gaslighting. So ultimately, toxic workplaces affect your health negatively. They affect you physically. They affect you emotionally. They affect you relationally. And I'll ask you again, how do you feel when you're in a toxic work environment? How does it make you feel? Type that in the chat window for me. Deflated, disengaged, disempowered, and frustrated? Do you feel incompetent? You don't have motivation. You're drained. You're getting sick, exhausted. You're powerless. You want to leave. You're disengaged. You're fed up. You question yourself. Yes, angry, depressed. You're not giving your 100%. You're exploited. You feel exploited. You're thirsty for alcohol. Yes, not saying that you're abusing any substances, but substance abuse does increase among people who are in toxic environments. Great. We know that these environments make us chronically stressed out. You're overworked, you're bullied, you're a victim of or contribute to office gossip. You feel those things. It's visceral. And this is why what I want to do during this workshop is actually give you some strategies on how you potentially can come back from this. So I really appreciate you all sharing your experience and how you feel, because it is so real, and I want to help make sure that you can feel a little better. I also, though, wanted to highlight, I noticed there are a lot of women on this this webinar today, but women are disproportionately affected by toxic workplaces. And a lot of that comes out of the gender leadership gap, and the fact that women are not being advanced enough or as equal rates to men in many office environments and leadership, in elected office, in all sorts of places in our society. If you think about it, there are more male hospital directors, but there's so many more women nurses. If you think about teaching, so many women teachers, not as many, proportionally that many superintendents. We look at even CEOs of organizations. So when we think about women in the workplace, you're dealing with, on top of the general toxicity, increased levels of discrimination and stereotypes, sexism, lower pay, hiring. You're not getting hired for some jobs or being passed over for promotions, but also you're expected to engage in a lot of emotional labor. That you're always expected to be happy and friendly and nice, and that also extracts a huge toll. And men don't always have that same exposure or experience. So, these gender imbalances within an organization do also affect culture. And when women are overlooked for job promotions, we find that workplaces also tend to be more toxic. So I just wanted to highlight this. It's not to, a lot of the skills that I'm just about to get to are can help, but I think it's important for us to also recognize that not everyone going into these situations are coming from an equal place. And we want to strive for that. And we want to make sure that if we're in an environment where we can lift someone up or amplify them, that we're also being good people and good colleagues as well. So let's get into kind of the main content today, which is what can you do? What can you do to affect and improve your toxic workplace environment? You might feel that it's hopeless. You might feel that you're depressed and unhappy with what your job is. You just want to head out of there. That is fine, totally valid. But you have the power to make a change. And by the way, if you haven't been up on it, this is She-Ra, the new Netflix TV show. She was based off an old 80s cartoon, but I wanted to show how much power we have going through here. So you have the power. What are things that you can do? There are 3 ways that you can exercise power to change your workplace. And I'm going to walk through each one of these. For one, it's your individual power. The second power that you have is your collective power. And the third one is the power of others. So let's walk through those, and then maybe I'll have an opportunity for us to kind of share. So first off, there's the power of you. You have the power to confront the problem at your workplace or the person's behavior that's affecting you, and you can do that directly, one-on-one. And so how do you go about doing that? For one, it's about preparation. And that is gathering your thoughts, writing down what you want to say, how you'll say it, and any examples that you may need. And when you're thinking about how you want to confront someone about this, make sure you're focusing on the consequences or the impact of the behavior, not necessarily how it makes you feel. Although we know that how you feel is very important, we're trying to make sure that we can explain a certain the consequences in the context of our workplace when we're talking to someone that might be a problem. Make sure that you anticipate responses. That is, you might be talking to someone very difficult and they're often stubborn and they might get defensive. So if you know that they're going to be defensive, when they are defensive, what are you going to respond with? How can you refocus that? And then the last one is remember to be compassionate. What is motivating your colleague to act in such a way? I've had micromanaging bosses. And when I reflected upon why they were that way, it was because I realized they were in too deep. They didn't understand, they didn't have a firm grasp of what their role was. And part of what I was able to do was talk about like, hey, let's build some structure around our projects right now. Let's see if that can help us do this. And in fact, it did add some measure of sanity back into the workplace there. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about this idea of using your power and having the confidence to do so? Anyone think that that's a good idea, maybe a challenge by that? Write that in the chat window and let's see what you have to say. Because this is probably the scariest of the 3 things that I'm going to share with you today.
And Jesse, as we wait for some of those responses to come in on the chat, I imagine that one of the things that some of our guests will say that it's a lot easier said than done, right?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. As David was writing, you need, what happens if you don't have that culture which this is supportive? And some of you saying it might be worth a shot. Some of you might be intimidated because it's just so deep rooted. This might be hard. Yeah. So the great thing about the power of you is that you, no matter what part of the organization you're in, you do have some power. And don't forget that you have some power to control that environment around you. I think Rachel is writing to us and saying, this assumes that a person is receptive, that there won't be any repercussions, and that it will matter. And Rachel, I think those are really great ideas to bring up because you might think that this person that you want to confront may not be receptive. So we might want to focus on maybe a different tactic. And that's why I'm going to bring us to the next one. Oops. Your collective power. So you might be in a scenario where you going and confronting someone or going to, and having that one-on-one conversation is not going to be productive. Or perhaps it's a power dynamic that you won't be able to navigate, and upon your reflection, find that that might not be the right route you have for you. So the second power I want to talk about is about your collective power. How do you, with other people, come together to identify a problem, discuss that problem, and address that problem? And there is power in collective action. This is about talking to your peers and seeing if they're experiencing the same problem. But of course, make sure it's a discussion that's solutions-based. We don't want to be guilty of the same gossip that others are doing, but this is a way that you can check if are other people are having a problem. And the idea of collectively documenting that problem and using your brains to discuss how to address that problem. Maybe someone that's a peer might have a different relationship with someone that's causing a problem. And maybe they are the one that's better able to go talk to someone. Or maybe there needs to be a workshop where people are brought together and say, we're going to have a workshop for this group of people, and that might be a way of addressing it. But ultimately, with this group, you can decide on a next step. Does that mean you have to have regular meetings together? Does that mean you have to set up an action plan, confront the problem, or maybe as a group set up a meeting with a manager? That collective power becomes a very crucial tool because you are now in a place where there's more than one, and someone can't easily dismiss it. And they can't blame as more than one person typically. So it creates, more power. Now, I'm seeing some comments here from Marina. Things do not change because it serves people that create and uphold toxic environments. Marina, I think in a way, a lot of environments are going to be really resistant to change, even if you're going about it from yourself or as a group. But there is, part of it's building that momentum. And can we start to break down those barriers and start to bring in allies to do this? And Davi is saying, she often represents the voice of her team. And that's really great. But she has found that sometimes she's the only one that follows through, and she ends up feeling like she's on an island. And I think, Davi, this is where the next, my next power, the third one, might be something for you to consider to help you build more power for yourself and for your team. D actually brings up unionized environments. Are those good or bad? Me personally, I'm a big fan of unions. I think that's collective bargaining at its finest. Not all unions are equal. Some have been better at, and some have struggled, I think, to make sure that there's a positive environment. But when I say collective power, I am actually channeling a little bit of a unionized idea, unionization and collectivism, in order to make sure that together as employees, as peers, you're working to solve a problem. So I actually think they serve a good in the world. Let's go to our third one here, and this idea of the power of others. And your success in confronting a toxic person or a toxic environment may not come from just you or your peers, but it may come from working with someone higher up. And that is, can you identify a manager or maybe some senior staff member who you can discuss the problem with and brainstorm possible solutions? This may not be HR. I have a particular opinion on HRs. I think they're evolving as a role in organizations, in that HR often advocates or can be found to be advocating for the organization and not always with the employees. So there might be someone else that might be a better position for that. Maybe a COO, a chief of staff, or maybe a manager from another team that you interact with. It's the idea that your power may not come from you directly, but from your engagement with someone with more organizational and or positional power. And how do you have those conversations with them? You would still have to do a lot of that preparation that I spoke about earlier in talking about the power of you. You know, writing down what are the concerns that you have, documenting, using examples. And then even I've gone to chief of staffs before, and I wrote down exactly what I wanted to say, and I read off a piece of paper because that was the way that I was best going to do it, and to have that situation be addressed. And we just were able to strategize. So this is where I think you have to remember you're not alone, and there are probably other people feeling the same way, or people that care enough that want to do something. Because ultimately, a toxic work environment reduces productivity, reduces revenue, increases costs, increases turnover. No one in the C-suite wants that, ultimately, if they want to have value. And so this is where some people you might be able to reach out to. Kay writes, yes, she did reach out to a C-level person with an email chat and asked them for coffee. And she initiated a relationship with that person so that they could, you know, talk. And I would say, even if you're not in this type of environment now, if you can reach out to anyone that's in a different, a higher level of positional authority, start laying down that groundwork now, because you might need that power later. It's okay to network within your organization and to build those allies, even if you don't need them right away. Any other questions or comments about these three powers that I talked about? Letting you type that out. Have anyone used any of these and found them also successful? Yeah. I would comment saying, we're really siloed. They're siloed in their organization and underlying distrust, so hard to make change. I want you to focus. It's hard to make change, but may not be impossible to make change. You know, those silos can be broken down in lots of different ways. And oh gosh, I know what siloing means. I've worked in DC government. Like, try working in a government, everything is siloed. But there are building those relationships to just reach across. You can do that. Remember, collective power is something you have the control over. You also can use the power of others to help too. So I would say if you feel distrusting, maybe try to trust yourself. Yeah, and Kat saying, you know, there might be someone that's helpful as a sounding board, but it's possible they can't actually make a change. That might be true. You might have to keep working to other people. And Candace, I know some people in power positions do tend to say they're an ally, but default to you wanting to deal with it, deal with it. This is why this is hard. And this is where sometimes it's a slog and sometimes it can work really well. And some of you now are just sharing more stories about the challenges you've had by going to HR. I know, let's see. In one situation, some folks went to HR and then HR threw them under the bus. This is why HR may not be the place that you go to. And finding out who your allies are is going to be really important. Or at least making sure that you're talking to your peers and maybe talking about who has the ear of the CEO lead. This is where we get into great conversation, because I'm looking at your comments about the problem with turnover and the problems of people not wanting to get their hands dirty. I understand. And this is where I want you to think about these three powers and how can you apply them to your situations. Because you may find that one is going to work now, and you may have to move to another one if it doesn't work, if you find that something doesn't work, and may have to have a mix of these. And But let's be honest. There are times when these don't work, and you might be thinking that it's time to leave. And I want to tell you that your physical and mental health is important. You know that. You don't need me telling you about how important your health is. But I know burnout, and it's real. And it's absolutely okay that you feel that way. The situation has happened that has made it you be in this position. And it may not be worth it. It's okay. Embrace that. It's not okay if you feel burned out. And your workplace will get on without you. You might decide that you're not in a place to move forward at the organization. It's okay. I just want you to feel that. But you might be looking for then another position. So how do you avoid a toxic workplace in the first place? And I'm going to share a couple things. So, for example, you can look for those red flags. Glassdoor is a great example where you can find what people have written. Maybe you know someone in the industry or you know people have worked at, so ask around. But also listen to what's not being said. You know how people can talk, how we do it all the time. Oh yeah, it's fine. If I say it's fine, you know that there's going to be something else that's not being shared. Maybe during your interview, you can take a restroom break. Go look around. Are people talking? Are they friendly? Are they sitting at their desks, eating lunch, not talking to anyone else? Maybe on that restroom break, you happen to notice a couple things. Those are signs that you might be in a place that's not the healthiest. And then ask questions about working there. Ask, how long have you been with a company? How long has your team been there? Asking whoever's hiring, how do your direct reports describe your management style? How do you celebrate success? Or, what was even asking, what was the department's biggest challenge? And what did you learn from it? There are questions that you can ask. And what I can do is if you email me, which I'm going to give you an opportunity to do so, I can share some of these answers back. And then, of course, you can ask questions. If you're not there with the manager, you're interviewing peers, potential peers, you might want to ask, what's your boss's management style like? Or what do you love about working with your boss? And if they don't say something like, oh, well, they're the greatest people ever, they love him, they help me, and all this stuff, then you might want to think, ask the questions that go between the lines. Have you found them to be really helpful or supportive? This might be a way of helping you learn things. How would you describe the team culture is a great question. And I always look for those eyes. When people know they want to say something, their eyes will move around and they'll look to someone else to see if they can get an answer if there's a problem. You can use these clues to help you avoid a toxic workplace. Anyone have other ideas about things that you found that were red flags potentially? Let's write that in the chat window. Yeah, Jill says if there's high turnover, there's a red flag. Anything else? If they offer you the job very, very quickly, that might be a sign of a toxic environment. Catherine says, I think you can all read that. Ask the manager, how would they handle someone on their team who's a high performer but also a bully? You're almost opening the door to say, you don't want to be in a toxic environment. Tell me about how you handle that if you're being in a good space. Allison says, if the position's been open for a long time, that might be a reason. When there are projects that are stuck, are the manager and interviewer synced on information? Or is there a bait and switch during the interviews? Who you talk to is not who you work with. Or if an interview is negative, expect more to come. As Alice also says, if the manager shares that they hate managing, that might be an issue. Davi says, what if I hear more I's than we's? As an I, like I do this, instead of we do this. Make sure there's a job description. Clint asked a question, are these questions that I pose more appropriate for informational interviews or for the formal interview? I'd say, Clint, if you've gotten to, I actually think that these could be used in a formal interview. When you're going to, particularly if you're in a place where you may have interviewed with the hiring manager, but you then were introduced to meet with the team, those are good opportunities to ask those questions. I think they're almost expected because you're talking to someone that's a potential peer, and they're invested in also making sure that you're a good fit for them. So I think that it's okay to ask that in those questions. You know, oh, I like that Nick writes, how did the interviewer manager treat other staff, like the office manager, the receptionist? You know, it's like going on a date, and if your date doesn't treat the server with respect and friendly, and they treat them badly, that's not a good date. That might be a toxic person. It's the same thing with how you work with your office manager, receptionist, or recruiter. We know that if you make friends with the people that that are support staff, you know that life becomes easy. You get a good relationship there. So that's a good thing to keep an eye on. So very good. So I'm going to move on because I want to make sure that we can do some questioning. So I just want to emphasize, you can thrive at work. I know that work can be stressful. I know that work can often feel that it's toxic. You can be in a place where you can be engaged. And that's where hopefully some of these skills that we've talked about will help you develop that. So how do you think about your individual power, your collective power, and the power of someone else in order to help you thrive at work? So I have two questions posed here. And I'd love it if you can make sure that if you can change your chat setting so that it goes to all panelists and attendees. I want you to share what's something that you found impactful during this workshop. And maybe what are your next steps going to be? So you can, if you read now, Lauren has written that remembering that we're not alone. That is a huge reason why I wanted to do this workshop with y'all, is because we're not alone. Everyone's feeling this. And it's what makes me motivated to try to help in some way. You can see Ruben has the idea how to assess the environment. Yeah. Alexandra, the fact that you can leave and they will get on without you. Yes, you can leave and they will get on without you. Yes, Justin, you have the power. As He-Man and She-Ra both say. Yes, Davi, be the change you wish to see. All right, so I have a couple next steps for you that I'm going to share. So first of all, I am developing a mailing list. So this company that I'm doing, it's new. And so we are working on our newsletter, and we're going to be sending out tips and all sorts of ideas over time. So I'd love it if you joined my mailing list. I'm going to type the link into the window so you can actually just click on it, bit.ly/replyallconsulting. That'll bring you to a Google form where you can share your email, and hopefully we can keep up a conversation about what we're doing. We're actually going to be offering workshops on that goes a little more in depth on what we've talked about today, actually doing some practical work and in each one of the 3 powers. So if you are interested in actually attending a more hands-on version of this workshop, sign up for our mailing list. If you want to talk about salary negotiation, it's another workshop that we offer, how to have those types of difficult conversations, or you want to just learn more about salary negotiation and how you can get a promotion or how you can make sure that you're negotiating for your fair market value, join the mailing list. You're going to get a lot of good information there, and our workshops will be held all over the country pretty soon. Now, you may also say, you want to ask me a question. We're all BU. We got to look out for each other. I want to make myself available to you to talk about ways that you need help in, anything that I can do to help you in your workplace. Email me at jesse@replyall.consulting. Allison, my website is not up yet. It should be up by the end of the week. Maybe I'll convince Jeff to send you all out a follow-up email. He's smirking. He doesn't know if he'll be able to. But if you join the mailing list, you will definitely get a link to our website when it launches. Candace, if you're interested in getting involved with this work, please also email me, because we're looking for facilitators around the country. It's another reason to way for you to get involved. If you are in DC, and I think there were 4 of you signed up that are here in DC, you can attend a workshop here. We're also going to be launching our next set in Chicago. So if you are here, make sure you do that. The email is actually jesse@replyall.consulting. I got one of those fancy endings on it. So if this is the actual email address. You can also email me to invite us to deliver a workshop to your organization. We're really good at saying things like that we're not coming in to help a toxic work environment and finding other ways to talk about it. It's like, we're bridging the gap between experienced employees and younger employees, bridging generational gaps. Sometimes that's a way in. But of course, I want you to just email me and share any ideas or comments that you have. Ultimately, we need to go slay toxicity and just wish it goodbye. And adding a little Death of the Night King in here for y'all. This is not a place to share your comments about last night's episode. You can email me about those. I've actually never seen it. But happy Game of Thrones ending day.
Jesse, congratulations. This is the first webinar we've had with the image of a stabbing. So,
well, we need to
ground here.
I'm glad that it was such a positive image. We ultimately all have a role, I think, in slaying toxicity, and it doesn't matter how big or small you are, where you are with power. We all can do something about it. So I hope that you'll be able to join my movement that we're forming. As I said, if you didn't see it, here's the bit.ly again with my email. Please follow along with there. But we have actually a couple minutes. I'm happy to take questions, and I will do my best to answer them if you'd like.
Jesse, while we are allowing questions to come in, let's put this up and ask people to give you some feedback on how they thought your presentation went. But again, feel free to put questions into the chat. I would actually want you to use the Q&A. That's a little bit easier for me to manage on the back end. But as Jesse said, we do have a few minutes remaining here. I know I was reflecting on some previous work experiences and thinking about, well, yeah, getting a group of my peers together to identify the problem and then try to talk to our manager. Sounds like a good idea, but ooh, I don't know how well that would go. So if you've got a unique situation that you want Jesse to weigh in on, we've got, again, 10 minutes remaining in the time that we allotted today. So please feel free to chime in with your questions now. We've got, Jesse, I'm seeing the answers come into the poll about how you did, and I think you're going to be pleased. Which is good news. So
good. I'll
go ahead and share that so folks can see, and you can see, but it looks like you did a pretty good job today.
Thank you all. This, I think, is just the beginning. I would love to have as many of you talking with me and having conversations, and maybe there's opportunities for us to bring people together to have some group conversations about how we can strategize, how we can improve our work environments or help the world have better work environments. It's a tough place out there right now. And I want to be a resource. And I think that you all have things to share as well. So, Jeff, if there are questions coming in through the Q&A, I am happy to answer some of those. And y'all just stick around, have some fun. Let's keep going.
So Kat's wondering, how do you know when enough is enough? Kat says she's worked to confront the issues directly and had some good conversations, but at the end of the day, nothing's changing and the leadership allows the toxicity. Hard to up and leave after working very hard to establish relationships, but how do you know when it's time, Jesse?
Kat, that's a fantastic question. And ultimately, the only person who can really answer that is you. I know that we all talk, or at least you can answer that question after talking to some people. Who are your mentors? Are there peers? Are there friends? Are there family that you can talk to talk through how you're feeling? And use that as an opportunity to reflect on, what are the problem sources? Do you feel the way that you do because it's one person? Or is it because of the system? Is it generally some level of systemic oppression? Like I didn't get into this from an oppression lens. If you come to another workshop of mine, we'll go in that way. But I think if you feel that you're just shallowed out and hollow, it might be time to move. And I didn't say just put in your notice and leave. It might be that you might just need to switch roles within your organization. That might be a possibility. You also might think that you need to find a new job before you leave. That's also good. Start that process of looking for new work, network, go to some more networking events. You're not alone in this. People will talk to you about how they're feeling, how organizations are, and that can help you. But Kat, ultimately, you know when it's enough. If you ask the question, you're already thinking that it might be enough.
Another question from Barbara that came in through the chat, Jesse. Do you have any suggestions about working with EEOC? She's filed a complaint and has a late summer date for mediation with them. Is that the Equal Opportunity?
Yeah, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I think. So Barbara, I am not a lawyer, and I think the EEOC complaints end up getting more into issues of legal interpretation and all that. What I would say is documentation. You need to bring your information, there and have it as clear and concise as possible, because ultimately they're going to be looking for, did someone break the law? Did someone create an unequal opportunity? Was there discrimination or bias? Was it what type of hostile work environment was it? Being prepared is going to make that conversation much, much easier. But I can't weigh in on actual legal advice on that. But I do wish you luck, particularly if if you have a problem and that things do get sorted. The EEOC and making formal complaints is an option if you do feel that discrimination is happening in your workplace. There are lots of assets that you can use, and lots of the communities we live in have nonprofits or other legal advisors who can help you figure out what's going on. So look for who is doing some workplace fairness things if you're interested in thinking that there's some sort of case that might go to EEOC.
Great question from Alexandra. She is in a very flat organization where there's not a lot of higher up power beyond the managing director, who is the source of the toxicity for her team. It doesn't seem like we can remove him based on past experiences, and it doesn't seem like he's willing to change. We've brought up our issues in 360 reviews and to HR countless times, and nothing seems to work. Is it time to leave, or is there something else she should try?
Alexandra, these are such difficult questions because you're in a difficult situation. flat organizations don't often afford us the power of utilizing someone else's power. I would wonder, I think thinking about the motivation of your managing director and thinking about why might they be acting in the way that they are. Are they overwhelmed because also of the same very flat organization that they don't have authority on something? Or do they feel that they have too much authority but are being second guessed by someone of the few people that are above them? What are the issues that affect causing them to do this? And maybe if your peers are also talking about this too, working with them to kind of think through what's going on and what are some of the strategies that you need. So if there's an idea of maybe you just need more structure, maybe you need to have daily or weekly check-ins and having a form that you fill out that helps you figure out what you're working on and give better updates that work better with your manager. There are other tools that you can use to make sure that communication is flowing. Because let's be honest, almost everything we've talked about today is communication and how people communicate with each other. So I think that might be something. And if you haven't spoken to maybe there are other directors that you can talk to, I would say that might be something else to do too. But as I said before, you're the one who knows when it's time to leave your organization. It's hard that's something. If you email me at jesse@replyall.consulting, perhaps we can talk a little more and just get a little more background on your situation, and we can strategize some more.
Jesse, thanks again for doing this today. 91% of the people who responded to our second poll wanted to let you know that they found today's presentation helpful. So on behalf of all BU alumni, thank you so much for doing this presentation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, y'all. And happy to work with y'all. Again, email me, join the mailing list. You're welcome. And Allison, you're on the West Coast. Good. If you have other comments or want to say thank you, let me know. I'll be honest, webinars are not always the greatest place for these types of workshops. I can feel how much you all want to talk and discuss these things. So I really appreciate your patience for working through this workshop with me, and I'm so glad to be of any help to you. Go Terriers, obviously. It's funny, while I'm looking to see if there are any last questions, another Terrier has been trying to call me. My sister is also a BU alum, and I guess maybe she was on the workshop and now she thinks I'm supposed to be done. I don't know.
Well, thanks again, Jesse, and thank you to everybody for joining us. I also specifically want to thank those of you who supported BU with donations in the past. Really appreciate your support. We have another great webinar coming up in June, on June 26th. Something that I think plays into communication, certainly in surviving toxic workplaces. We're going to host a session called Boost Your Emotional Intelligence to Drive Performance and Partnership. You can sign up for that webinar now on our website, again at bu.edu/alumni. In the meantime, I encourage you to check out our relatively new alumni career interview podcast. We've launched a podcast. It's called Proud to Be You. You can access it wherever you normally might access a podcast. And what we do is interview interesting and successful alumni, ask them to reflect on their BU experience and how it's played a role in their development of their career. It's been fascinating to work on, and I encourage you to listen to Proud to Be You and then rate and review for us. As always, if you or any BU alum would be interested in doing a webinar like this for the BU community, I'm now accepting submissions for our next education year, our next school year of sessions. So please feel free to reach out to me at the alumni office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, again for joining us. Have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be.
Thank you, Jeff.